Ladies and gentlemen, by a show of hands, how many of you were here tonight because of Rose? And how many were here because of Steve? How many don't know either and are just a +1? Well, for those of you who aren't intimately familiar with either one of them, I invite you to sit back, relax, as we tell you the love story of Rose and Steve. It all started a long, long time ago, in that phase of life that marks the coming of age, high school. It's the story of a boy and a girl on opposite tracks, overcoming those that would stand in their way to find true love. Now, I'm not talking about the rivalry between schools or families. I'm talking about a freshman and a senior. Yes, when Rose was a young freshwoman, she one day took notice of the handsome Steve, who happened to be friends with her older sister. Because of that friendship, Rose and Steve would find themselves at many of the same social gatherings her sister would host. Steve tried his best to show his affections for Rose, but she didn't seem to give him much attention. After all, she wasn't quite sure about his flirtatious nature. He tried again at a school dance, urgently wanting to invite Rose to dance, but her sister continued to discourage him from it. And so it continued for a while until that one day, in 2006, when they took a vacation they would never forget. It was almost as if the Ballman family were unknowingly playing matchmakers, as Tara Ballman invited her friends Joette and Rose to go with her on a family vacation to Maryland. And who else would Dave Ballman invite as his guest other than, you guessed it, Steve? Imagine their surprise as they find themselves on a would-be romantic vacation to the beach together, their hosts completely unaware of the spark they just ignited. Steve wasted no time employing his boyish charm, donning his best tropical accent, offering to be Rose's cabana boy and rub tanning oil over her. She laughed it off at the time, but deep down, she smiled at how cute he was. He must have made a good impression because at the end of the trip, Rose managed to get Steve's number and the two of them exchanged text messages the whole ride home. Shortly after their vacation, Rose tested the water by inviting Steve to come over. In the romantic ambience of the backyard tiki torches, and accompanied by Rose's mom and sister, they shared a wonderful moonlight swim. It was not long before Steve invited Rose on their first official date to Grande's Pizza, where he demonstrated his chivalrous finesse and gentlemanly demeanor. And if it wasn't that enough to win her over, must have been his '85 Oldsmobile. After that night, it was like the sky was a little bluer, the sun shone a little brighter, and little birds were singing songs of love in the air. And so they continued to grow together, facing the joys and challenges of true love. Even a year apart couldn't break the love they had for one another. They became such a beautiful couple that the rest of the family couldn't help but wonder when they would take that next step. Even their young nephews couldn't help but wonder, Aunt Rose, is Steve gonna engage you? And then the next step came. Together, they bought a home in Binghamton, knowing that they would be in this for the long haul. But the financial burden of buying a house nearly stopped their now traditional journey back to Ocean City, where it all began. Rose's sister stepped in and offered to let them stay with her to save some money, and the annual vacation continued. But this time, it would be the vacation that would change their relationship forever. Steve had selected the perfect ring and the perfect morning to ask the love of his life to marry him. They started the morning with a run on the beach, and when he went back to his room to get the ring, his plans for the perfect proposal were shifted just slightly, as the run had made them a little hot and sweaty, and as Rose so delicately describes it, they had BO. Later that day, though, he got his chance back as they stood on the condo balcony, overlooking the ocean and breathing in the warm sea air. Steve whispered in Rose's ear those three magic words, I love you. He told her that she was his best friend, and that he wanted her to be the mother of his children. Rose felt like rays of sunshine would burst from her smile as Steve got down on one knee, pulled out the ring, and asked her to marry him. She immediately pulled him up for a hug and an emphatic yes, and the rest is history. Now standing right outside that door is the couple whose love story is just beginning. Please welcome the new Mr. and Mrs. Hertzler, Steve and Rose.